right, diving in today, getting into some, well, secret stuff. Secret exercises of physique champions. The title alone is intriguing, right?
Oh, absolutely. It definitely piques the curiosity. And knowing you, always on the lookout for those little gems, those training tweaks that can make a real difference, this one seemed right up your alley.
You know me too well. I'm all about squeezing out every bit of efficiency, effectiveness, less fluff, more muscle, so to speak.
No shortcuts, but smarter work for sure.
Exactly. And the guy who compiled this collection, Dennis B. Weiss, the Yukon Hercules, he clearly had that mindset. So let's dig into what he's unearthed, these so-called secrets of the physique champions, and see what we can apply to our own training.
Sounds good to me. I'm all ears.
All right, first step is something called the measured movement power deadlift. Weiss also calls it the wooden plank concept.
Catchy name. What's the deal with that?
So the premise is pretty bold. Weiss claims this method can add up to, get this, 10% to your max deadlift.
10%. That's a significant jump.
Huge, especially if you're already lifting some serious weight. And he backs it up with his own experience. Back in the 70s, he was stuck at a 500-pound deadlift, just couldn't break through.
Hit a plateau. Happens to the best of us.
Right. And then he starts working with this guy, Ernest F. Cottrell, who was a bodybuilding and powerlifting coach. Cottrell puts Weiss on this specialized deadlift program, and bam, his strength takes off.
I'm guessing this program wasn't your typical deadlift routine.
Nope, not at all. The core of it was deadlifts twice a week, but with some really specific tweaks. So you start with your conventional deadlifts, 2 sets of 6 reps at your 10-rep max.
Okay, standard enough so far.
But here's the twist. At the top of each rep, you do a 2-second hold, shoulders shrugged up and back, arms slightly bent. And then when you lower the bar, you pause for 2 or 3 seconds just off the floor, no touching.
Interesting. Lots of control. I like that.
Yeah, and you rest for a good 8 to 10 minutes between sets, really letting your body recover.
So, intentional pauses, long rest periods. What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, Weiss explains that the hold at the top really hammers those upper back muscles involved in the lockout, and that slight bend in the arms, it might help with overall stability.
Makes sense. And that pause just off the floor, it eliminates any momentum, right? Forces you to start from a dead stop each time.
Exactly. Builds that raw starting strength.
Smart. So where do the wooden planks come in?
Ah, that's the secret sauce. So you need stocks of these 2 by 12 by 2 foot planks, enough to elevate the barbell to about knee height.
So you're shortening the range of motion significantly.
Yep. And here's the kicker. You load the bar with 10% more than your absolute max. So if your best deadlift is 500 pounds, you're putting 550 on the bar.
Whoa, okay. Lifting more than your max, even for a short distance.
Exactly. It's about pushing those boundaries, getting your body accustomed to handling those heavier loads.
I see, psychological as well as physical. But how do you actually do the lift with the planks?
So you perform 6 to 10 slow, controlled singles with a firm lockout at the top. And get this, you rest 3 to 5 minutes between each rep.
Wow, that's a lot of rest.
It is, but remember, you're working with super maximal weight here. The key is quality over quantity. And now, here's where the real training magic happens.
Tell me more.
It's all about the progression. Each workout, you remove 1 plank from each stack. Sometimes you might remove more, depending on how you're feeling.
So you're gradually increasing the range of motion.
Exactly. Working your way down until you're pulling from the floor again. And here's a crucial detail. Even when you've removed a bunch of planks, you always start your first rep from that knee-high position.
Interesting. So each set starts at the highest point and then works its way down.
Yep, reinforces that strength at the lockout. Now, once you're back to deadlifting from the floor, you add another 10% and repeat the whole cycle.
I see. So it's this constant cycle of pushing your limits, then strategically backing off, and then pushing again.
Exactly. Weiss recommends doing 2 cycles of this and then taking a break for a couple of months.
Makes sense. This sounds pretty intense. What about other exercises during these deadlift-focused workouts?
Yeah, good point. So for the Monday-Thursday workout, he adds in prone back hyperextensions. Those are great for strengthening the posterior chain. And then some stiff-legged deadlifts while standing on a box to work on hamstring and lower back flexibility.
Good additions. I can see how those would complement the deadlifts.
Definitely. He also mentions if the twice-a-week deadlifts are too much, you can stretch the cycle to 8 days, giving yourself 3 full days of rest after each session.
That's good to know. It's all about listening to your body and adjusting the intensity as needed.
Absolutely. And one last thing about this wooden plank concept, he actually suggests you can use it for other exercises too.
Oh, really? Like what?
You can adapt it for barbell back squats, just have your glutes touch the planks at the bottom. And even for bench press, you can use planks to limit the range of motion at the bottom of the rep.
Wow, so the principle can be applied to other compound lifts as well. That's pretty insightful.
All right, ready for secret exercise number 2?
Hit me.
This one is called the tensile contraction leg curl. And it's especially handy if you don't have a leg curl machine.
Ah, I can see where this is going. Another creative workaround.
You got it. So what you do is use an adjustable sit-up board, lie face down, strap your feet to the inclined end, and then curl your body up from the knees.
Using your body weight as resistance. Makeshift leg curl. Clever.
Yeah, and the key here is you're using pure hamstring strength. Weiss says you might need to push off with your hands at first, but you want to work towards doing it all with your hamstrings.
I've never actually tried that, but it sounds challenging.
It definitely is, and he emphasizes finishing each rep in an almost kneeling position, really getting that full contraction.
And he calls it tensile contraction. Why that specific term?
Well, tensile contraction basically means the muscle is generating force while it's being lengthened. It's different from a regular contraction where the muscle shortens as it contracts.
I see, so like a controlled eccentric movement. And in this case, the hamstrings are working against the weight of your upper body as they lengthen.
Right? And he believes this type of contraction can really stimulate muscle growth. It's a completely different stimulus than what you get from a traditional leg curl machine.
I can imagine. All right, what's next on our list of secrets?
This one's for the lats. Expander cable lat pulls. White says these are especially effective after you've already done some heavy back work like rows or pull downs.
Interesting. I use resistance bands sometimes, but I'm curious to hear his take on them.
He's got a very specific technique, and it's probably not how most people would use bands or cables.
All right, lay it on me. How does he do it?
So you start by holding the cable overhead slightly in front of your body with a little bend in your elbows. The cable should be pretty strong, so you can't fully extend it at first.
Gotcha. So you're already starting with some tension.
Yeah. Now, you pull the handles apart to a certain point, we'll call it A. Then you relax just a little, let your hands come back maybe 4 or 5 inches, and then, boom, immediately try to pull past half point A. You do this little pulsing movement 3 to 5 times.
So it's like a mini set within the set.
Exactly, and that whole sequence of pulses, that's 1 rep.
Intriguing. What's the reasoning behind that pulsing action?
Weiss doesn't go into detail, but I'm guessing it's about pre-fatiguing the muscles in a specific part of the range of motion, maybe increasing blood flow to the area.
Yeah, it could be. Like a targeted warm-up almost.
Yeah, something like that. Now, the progression comes when you get strong enough to pull past point A consistently. Let's say you can now reach point B.
Okay, so you're getting stronger. What changes then?
At point B, you straighten your arms completely and then pull hard downwards and backwards. Imagine bringing the cables tight across your upper chest, near your neck. That's where you'll feel the full lat contraction. And as you get stronger in that full range, you simply increase the cable resistance and start over.
So it's like a built-in progression system.
Exactly. Now, when to do these, Weiss liked doing 4 reps. Remember, each rep is those 5 little pulses, right after a set of heavy back work, like rows, pull-downs, dips, even pullovers.
I see. So it's like a finisher for those compound exercises.
You got it. Or he'd do them after all his back work was done, almost like a cool down.
Interesting. Almost like a way to flesh out the muscles. And he even recommends doing them before barbell rows if you have trouble feeling your lats working.
Right, sort of pre-activating them.
I can see how that can help with mind-muscle connection.
All right, ready for secret number 4? This one is a doozy. It's called Gironda prone dumbbell rowing.
Gironda, as in Vince Gironda, the Iron Guru.
The one and only. He was way ahead of his time with a lot of his training techniques.
Oh, I know. I've read some of his stuff. Fascinating, if a little unconventional.
Totally. So this exercise is all about targeting the outer lats. Weiss starts by describing the setup for a regular prone barbell row. You'd use some benches or boxes to support a flat bench.
So you're lying face down on the bench.
Exactly. And the barbell is positioned on the floor underneath. He talks about different grip widths, overhand, underhand, and how to keep your wrists straight, elbows in. The important thing is to really isolate the lats and arms.
Makes sense. Now, what about Gironda's dumbbell version?
Okay, so imagine this. You're lying face down, heavy dumbbells in your hands, arms hanging straight down, knuckles forward.
Okay, got the visual. What next?
You pull the dumbbells up as high as you can, but here's the key. You flare your elbows out to the side, 90 degrees to your body.
So not pulling straight up towards your chest. Interesting.
Right, as your elbows reach shoulder level, you lift your head and legs off the bench, arching your back. Only your stomach stays on the bench.
Whoa. Okay, so you're adding a back extension element to the row.
Yep. And in this arched position, you really squeeze your shoulder blades together, hold for 2 seconds. Then, still holding the dumbbells, you bring your upper arms back alongside your body, hold for another 2 seconds. Finally, you lower back down.
That's a lot going on in one rep. It's like a combination row, back extension, and isometric hold.
It is, and it's brutal. Really hits those outer lats hard.
I bet. Any other tips for this one?
Weiss mentions you can briefly rest the dumbbells on the floor between reps if you need to, and he recommends using a cambered bar for the barbell version, just to get a bigger range of motion.
Good advice. And of course, chalk for grip. Can't forget the chalk.
Always a good idea with heavy lifts. All right, let's move on to secret number 5. This one is called the compound towel chins lever.
Towel chins, is that what it sounds like?
You know your stuff. It starts with towel chins. You take 2 sturdy towels, drape them over a chin-up bar, and grip the ends about 10 to 12 inches below the bar.
I've done those before. Great for grip strength.
Exactly. Weiss claims they also really hit the lats, even more than regular chins. As you get stronger, you can start adding weight. Weiss was doing them with 60, 70 pound added.
That's impressive. And then what, the lever part?
Right. So as you get really strong with those towel chins, you start incorporating the lever element.
How does that work?
Okay, here's the progression. First, you do your towel chins with your hands just a few inches below the bar. Then, as you can do more than 10 reps, you lower your hands on the cowls. When you hit 10 reps with your hands 12 inches below the bar, you start adding weight around your waist.
So you're gradually making it harder.
Exactly. And then when you can do 10 reps with about 35% of your body weight added, you're ready for the chin lever.
Okay, break down the technique for me.
So you start in a dead hang, do a full chin up, then lower yourself slowly until your arms are at a 90-degree angle. From there, with your knees bent and your body straight and rigid, you raise your knees up until your body is horizontal.
Like a human flag almost.
Kind of, but your arms are bent. You hold that lever position briefly, lower back down to the dead hang, and repeat. Aim for 5 or 6 reps per set.
Sounds tough. Combines pulling strength with core strength and hip flexor control.
It is. Weiss even suggests tying a dumbbell around your waist if you need more weight for the lever.
Hardcore. Okay, on to the next secret then.
Next up, we've got one for the chest, hanging ring flies. This was one of Larry Scott's favorites. You know, the first Mr. Olympia.
Oh yeah, Larry Scott. Incredible physique, especially his upper chest development. I've heard he was a big proponent of ring work.
He was. So for this, you need a set of gymnastics rings, ideally the leather-covered ones. Hang them from a secure beam, shoulder-width apart at about bench height. Then you need a flat bench positioned a bit more than arm's length away from the rings.
Okay, got the setup. How do you perform the exercise?
So you start kneeling, facing the rings, bench behind you. Grab the inside of the rings with a palms forward grip. Bring the rings in close to your upper chest, just below your pecs.
So the rings are touching your forearms.
Right. Arms almost straight, but with a slight bend in the elbows. From this kneeling position, you walk backwards, keeping your grip on the rings until your toes are on the bench.
So you're essentially in a declined push-up position, but with your hands in the rings.
Exactly. Keep your torso rigid, knees slightly bent, and slowly lower yourself down towards the floor. As you lower, rotate your wrists outwards, so you end up in a spread-eagled position. Chest about 6 inches off the floor.
So it's an inverted fly motion. I can imagine that creates a huge stretch in the chest.
It does, especially in the upper pecs. Now, to come back up, you slowly pull yourself up using just your pecs. Think about drawing your arms together, not pressing. At the top, lock out your arms and bring your hands as close together as possible, squeezing those inner pecs.
I like that emphasis on the squeeze at the top. Really accentuates the contraction.
Absolutely. And sometimes, at the end of a set, he would do what he called burnouts.
Burnouts, what are those?
Basically, partial reps, half reps, quarter reps in the stretch position, middle position, and the contracted position, just to really exhaust the muscle fibers.
Smart. So a way to really push past your limits at the end of a set. Any other tips for this exercise?
Yeah, he mentions that if you elevate your feet higher on the bench, it'll target the upper pec even more. Feet on the floor, more emphasis on the lower pecs.
That's good to know. Gives you some options to modify the exercise based on your goals.
And one last thing, for anyone who wants to learn more about hanging rings and the different exercises you can do with them, Weiss recommends checking out www.biophase.com.
Great resource. I might have to check that out myself.
All right, ready for the final secret exercise?
Bring it on.
This one is called Gironda V-bar dips. It was one of Larry Scott's go-to exercises for building his chest.
I've seen those V-bars before. They look interesting, but I haven't tried them myself.
So the setup is a little unique. You need a small mounting box positioned between the uprights of the V-bar. You stand on this box facing the inner V of the bars and get into the starting position for a dip.
Okay, so far so good. What about the grip? Is it the same as a regular dip?
Not quite. He uses a thumbless grip, also called a false grip. Basically, your palms and the heels of your hands are facing outwards, thumbs pointing to the rear, hands about 32 inches apart. He claims this grip is more comfortable and takes stress off the biceps.
Interesting. Never tried that grip for dips.
Yeah, it's different. Now, your posture is crucial. Arms straight, elbows locked at the top, chin tucked to your chest. Round your feet off the crossbar and position them under your face, slightly in front of your abs. Your body will form a bit of a curve.
So not your typical straight up and down dip position.
Nope, it's more angled. Now take a deep breath and relax your abs.
Okay, I'm ready. What's the movement like?
Slowly lower your body down, but as you do, flare your elbows out to the sides, keeping them in line with your shoulders. Don't let them drift back. Keep lowering until your outer pecs are just a couple of inches from your hands.
So a lot of emphasis on keeping those elbows wide.
Exactly. Larry Scott would actually stop the descent when his elbows were about halfway between shoulder height and overhead. He felt this gave him a really good stretch in the lower pecs.
I can see how that would target the lower pecs differently.
Right, and from that bottom position, he would do what he called double bounces, just little half reps up and down about 10 to 12 inches.
So like pessing at the bottom of the movement.
Yep. He'd do several of those, inhaling on the stretch, exhaling on the way up. He believed it helped expand his ribcage.
Sounds intense. What about coming back up?
After the double bounces, you pull yourself back up by straightening your arms, but do it in small increments. Keep those elbows flared out and forward the whole time.
Really emphasizing the pec engagement.
Absolutely. Lice describes the feeling at the top as being like a decline press and a cable crossover at the same time.
Wow, that's some serious pec activation.
It is. Now, if you don't have the strength or flexibility to go all the way down at first, Weiss says just start with a smaller language motion and gradually increase the depth as you get stronger.
Good advice. Start where you're at and gradually progress. Any other tips for this one?
He mentions that Larry Scott used to superset these V-bar dips with declined dumbbell flies for a killer chest workout, and at the bottom of the fly, Scott would flex his neck and lift his head to get an even deeper stretch in the pecs.
Wow, that's dedication.
He was all about those details, and for anyone looking for a V-dipping bar, they're not as rare as they used to be. Larry Scott's associates are actually manufacturing them now. You can find more info at biophase.com.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From deadlifts to leg curls, lats to pecs, these physique champions had some pretty unique tricks up their sleeves.
Yeah, they really did, and I think the biggest takeaway here is that there's always room for experimentation in training. It's not just about doing the standard exercises, it's about finding what works best for you, for your body, for your goals.
Absolutely. And paying attention to those little details, the pauses, the angles, the grip variations, those can make a huge difference in how effectively you target a muscle.
Definitely. And sometimes you got to think outside the box, try something new, something unconventional. That's how you break through plateaus and keep making progress.
I'm with you there. All right, so after exploring all these secret exercises, it begs the question, what kind of tweaks or even totally new movements might we try in our own training? Could borrowing some of these strategies, even in a modified way, help us achieve new levels of growth and maybe unlock a deeper understanding of our own physical potential?
That's a great question, something to ponder. And that's what the deep dive is all about, right? Exploring new ideas, pushing boundaries, and constantly seeking those little edges that can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
My pleasure. Until next time.